Wyatt Earp was never a town marshal or county sheriff. He was assistant marshal in Dodge City, Kansas, and deputy U.S. marshal in Arizona. Okay, he was close to being top dog. That should count for something. Wyatt's only known run for office was when he ran against and beat his half-brother Newton for constable of Lamar, Missouri in 1870. Not bad, undefeated in politics. Wyatt's full name was Wyatt Barry Stapp Earp, after his father's commanding officer in the Mexican War, Wyatt Barry Stapp. Wyatt was sued 3 times for claim jumping in Eagle, Idaho. Wyatt's theory must have been, if you can't find your own gold, just steal it from somebody else. Wyatt claimed in his autobiography that he used a telephone in Tombstone to call Benson. Most researchers believe he wasn't recalling his time there correctly, since Earp left Arizona by March 1882 and telephone lines from Tombstone to Benson weren't completed until years later. Wyatt don't need no stinking telephone lines. Wyatt liked to eat ice cream at Tombstone's Ice Cream Saloon on 4th Street. The Earps and Doc Holliday walked past it on their way to the fight near the OK Corral. Well, duh, who don't like ice cream, gunslingers included? There were 5 Earp brothers, not including their half-brother Newton, who became known as the Fighting Earps. 4 were shot and 2 died as a result. Their father, Nicholas Earp, was kicked by a mule. Only one Earp went through life without a scratch, Wyatt. Wyatt and 2 of his brothers, Morgan and Virgil, were often mistaken for one another. They were about 6 feet tall and weighed within 3 pounds of each other, about 158 pounds. But Wyatt always stipulated that he was the best looking. Wyatt was a long-time boxing devotee. In addition to the infamous bout he refereed in San Francisco, he also refereed boxing matches in Tijuana, Mexico. Wyatt was a bartender longer than he was a lawman. His 2 loves in life, whiskey and upholding the law. Wyatt was accused of stealing schoolhouse funds, over $200, while acting as Lamar's constable. Break the law, uphold the law. Such a fine line. Wyatt was arrested for stealing a horse in 1871. There seems to be a pattern emerging here. Do as I say, not as I do. Wyatt was incarcerated for horse stealing, but escaped jail and was never caught. 2 other defendants in the horse stealing affair were exonerated, or at least never convicted. That horse stealing thing seemed to be a pattern of bad behavior. In 1876, while Wyatt was playing cards in a Wichita saloon, his revolver slipped from its holster and discharged as it hit the chair. The ball passed through Wyatt's coat, struck the north wall, then glanced off and passed through the ceiling, reported a local newspaper. Wyatt's middle name should have been Lucky. That same year, the Wichita City Council accepted the police committee's recommendation, which stated that policemen Wyatt Earp and John Behrens had been collecting money in the town and had failed to turn it over to the city. Wyatt had already skipped town for Dodge City. Okay, so Wyatt was not an angel. In the spring of 1877, Wyatt hauled wood in Deadwood, Dakota Territory, and claimed to have made $130 a day in the process. Sign me up. Pretty good coin for 1877. On the night of City Marshal Fred White's fatal shooting in Tombstone, Wyatt wasn't armed and had to borrow a weapon. Thanks in part to Wyatt's testimony, bad man Curly Bill Brocious was exonerated for the killing. And I thought Curly and Wyatt were bitter enemies. Although lionized for single-handedly standing off a mob in the Johnny Behind the Deuce affair, Wyatt isn't mentioned in any known newspaper accounts of the incident. Reporters of that era were about as competent as those of today. Wink, wink. The only persons not hit by gunfire in the OK Corral gunfight were Ike Clanton, who ran away from the first salvo, and Wyatt Earp, who stayed until the bitter end. Like I said earlier, Wyatt's nickname should have been Lucky. Wyatt was in several barroom fights in Alaska and was arrested more than once. In one, he was charged with assaulting and beating a military policeman. Barroom fights, a constant in Wyatt's life. Wyatt served as a movie consultant on several films, most notably those of William S. Hart and Tom Mix. This is where the plot from the movie Sunset, starring James Garner as Wyatt and Bruce Willis as Tom Mix, came from. Is there no end to Wyatt's lifelong pursuit of various employment opportunities? Wyatt periodically traveled from his Happy Days mine, located near Vidal, California, to Needles, California, where he would join in card games and invariably fleece soldiers on their payday. Ever the card player and swindler. Late in life, Wyatt decided to pursue culture and read Shakespeare. His comment, quote, "That feller Hamlet was a talkative man. He wouldn't have lasted long in Kansas," unquote. Wyatt and Shakespeare, not a likely combination. The historical record says around 30 shots were fired at the gunfight near the OK Corral. Earp claimed in his autobiography, quote, "So rapid were the flashes from the guns that the heat of the metal extended back to the butts of the 45s until the palms of the gunners began to burn." Wyatt was known to embellish a story to a certain extent. At death, Wyatt was cremated, and his ashes are buried in a cemetery in Colma, California, beside his third wife, Sadie. And so ends a story of a larger-than-life Old West lawman and gunslinger. If you enjoyed this video, give a thumbs up, make a comment, or most importantly, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for watching.